7:35, that's 25 minutes moving up to 8 o'clock. Welcome back to First Up right here on CTV. Every other Tuesday, we have our friends from the Unit Trust Corporation. Today, we have our marketing officer with the UTC, Nilma Campbell, and also investment center manager, Simone Lampkin. Ladies, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. We have an extended remix version this morning.
We do.
Yes. But today we're starting our conversation with saving for your child's education. I mean, any parent will tell you, I mean, even in the age of GATE, it's important to start thinking possibly even before you have the child. Wouldn't you say so, Simone?
Exactly. I think one of the things that resonates with us as a parent, from the time we hold our babies, we think about their future. And our first thing that pops in our minds, it's their education. So when we understand, when we look back and we think about their future and we be looking forward to them and we saying, listen, I want my child to be successful in life. There's an old adage that says, a good education is better than gold. Silver may fade, but a good education will not decay.
Yeah, and a success is really predicated on one being prepared for success, and that's what education does.
Correct. Correct. We also want to ensure that we set them up in order to fulfill their dreams. And as parents, especially if we have more than one child, that cost can be pretty high for them. So it's important that we plan. It's a goal that we have to set and understand that the earlier we start, we give ourselves a better opportunity to prepare and to be able to face that cost, because outside of their education, your child's education, it's one of the biggest expenses you will have, because we have retirement, we have to prepare for that, your home ownership, we have to prepare for that, and of course in unexpected illnesses.
Let's talk about, very often when you think education, most people, we in Trinidad Tobago find ourselves in a fortunate but peculiar situation where we're really blessed. Sometimes we take it for granted. We have universal early childhood, we have primary education, secondary education, books provided by the state. Now we have GATE. Let's separate them into three categories, the education. And though the education system provides free education, there are costs involved.
Very much so.
If you don't factor in those costs at the primary, secondary, and tertiary level, even with the state providing a substantial subvention at each stage, you're going to get yourself in problems with your budgeting. Not so, Nilma?
Yes, you do. You do. GATE caters, as you said, primarily for tuition. If you're looking at tertiary, that's when you get to tertiary education. But prior to that, you have all the other expenses associated with preschool, primary school, secondary school. At preschool, there are all the things that the teachers do. You have all the unexpected field trips, for example. But when you're looking at your expenses overall,
preschool is not free.
No, it is not. And even when you go, because you may even at primary school, you have to take into consideration, though there's a government system, some of us choose to go private. And you have to take into consideration the associated costs where that is concerned. And in some instances, you have school fees increasing gradually and sometimes exponentially. Correct.
And sports clothes.
Exactly. Right?
We also have even the music
lessons.
Because there's no the implementation of that.
Yes, exactly.
It is the visual and performing.
So you should really start, as we said, from the very inception. We are planning to have the child in utero, and when the child is born, looking at these three stages. What's the best practical way to do that in terms of allocating funding with instruments that may exist within the UTC, because they're at various stages going down, and you have to balance that, as Simone said, with other expenses that you have to cater for, because it seems pretty daunting.
Of course, and at the Unit Trust Corporation, we have two products that is really geared towards long-term investment, because planning for their education is a long-term goal. Understanding that the tertiary level education is where the bulk of your financial resources will have to be allocated. But along the way, we still have to ensure that we have funds that we can access, because if we're talking getting prepared for lessons for SEA, we have to have a short-term instrument that we can invest, access funds. And it's important that we also have the SIPP, which is for giving the opportunity to have you getting insurance coverage, accidental, medical, and
because it's a child.
Of course. So therefore we have the SIPP, and that fund allows you to also invest for the long term and gives you that coverage. So once we can, and we know along the way things can happen, so we give them, so we ensure that we can provide for them as they go along.
So there's some flexibility and access available.
There is.
Through those funds.
We also have the Children Investment Starter Plan Investment for
which
the
is
child, which is called the CISP. You can start that account from the time the child is born. And that, when you open that account, you must start with 10 units, whatever the price is of the day. With 5 units. We add another 5 units to that, and that 5 units you don't have access to for a period of 5 years. So you now have a starter where you can continue building on that account until the child maybe starts primary school. And as you access funds at that point, you can continue saving and then move on to secondary, and it grows with the child. Another element about the Student Investment and Protection Plan, which is the SIPP, that investment gives you, as Simone said, the twofold element of the account, which is the savings as well as the insurance. One of the things that I like about the insurance is that it doesn't just cover the child while the child is at school, it also covers them while they are abroad. So if you have a child that's studying abroad, because this child has coverage until they're 18 or 23 if they go on to tertiary education. So this investment allows the parent to have some level of coverage for the child, though accidental as it may be.
What does that coverage provide for?
It prepares for its accidental injury to your child. So if anything accidentally happens, even if they're playing in sport, because your child may be so inclined, right, and they get injured, whatever the injury is, you can then be reimbursed a percentage of your expenses. And then there's the element where you can save from 6 months on, because that's the time you can start the account with $50 minimum, where $25 goes to the investment, $25 to your insurance, giving the child annual coverage. But I generally prefer 5-year coverage because that takes only $100 to give you that. And you save throughout the child's years until they're 18, where you can now access the funds, which is where you need the bulk of your investment for tertiary education. Because Simone would have said before, tertiary education is really where you have the greatest level of expense when you're talking about your child's education.
One of the misnomers I think that people have, I mean, while we, once again, I'm blessed to have GATE, because I keep telling people, we take it for granted in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, we do.
Because when Caribbean students and even North American European students say, your government pays for your undergrad and part of your postgrad, that is, people don't understand what a gift that is until it's gone, I guess, down the road many years. Even though that is the case, you will realize books, registration, it adds up.
Dorm fees.
Dorm fees. If you're a foreign student, even if you're a local student, not living or living on campus.
Entertainment.
Projects.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Projects.
Sometimes extra lessons.
That's right.
I'm doing extra lessons now in statistics. It adds up because if you're going to do it, sometimes you need supplemental support.
Yes.
You know, and you need, even if GATE is there at some level, because GATE covers the full undergrad with the exception of registration. Postgrad, it covers, I think, 2/3 or half in some instances.
50%.
You still need to prepare for it.
Correct.
Because there are going to be some significant costs associated with your tertiary level education. And that's almost like basic these days anyhow, to be competitive in this world.
But you also have to take into consideration inflation as well, because inflation is a great impact. If you look at someone who might have gone for tertiary studies in 1980, that may have cost them $100,000. Today you're talking about close to $289,000 for the very same education. And when you're considering your child's education as well, you also need to take into consideration the field that they may choose to pursue.
Specialization.
Correct. Medicine, aeronautics, lawyer, as the case may be. It has the varying costs associated with that, and you have to prepare just as you would prepare for in your budget when you're preparing for things like housing. You have to budget for on a monthly basis in preparing for your child's education to mitigate against the horror of being faced with all these expenses all at once. The earlier you start, just as if you're starting preparing from your first paycheck for your retirement, from the day you're thinking about having a child, once that child comes into the world and you can then have an investment instrument for that child, you should start investing
and the
for that
important
child.
thing also, as the UTC, as many of your colleagues have told us, it's important to count the number of paychecks you have.
Yes.
When a child is born, you say, okay, well, I have 11 paychecks or 10 years paychecks.
That's right.
Until SCA. And then I have an additional 5 years until the levels and A/A levels, and then we have the 18 in all until or 20 until undergrad university. So you actually have time where you can start building that in addition to your other points of investment in your life.
And Paul, also, it's not a bad idea to get them involved as well.
Well, I would hope so.
Let them be part of the process as well, because gifts are given to them. You get bonuses, and that should be one of the things we should always be mindful of, because no matter how much we try to plan, sometimes contingencies occur, and we understand that what we may have as our nest egg to prepare, it may not be enough. So it's always to try to be over-prepared rather than be...
Whether you have a surplus of funds when they're 18, then you don't have enough.
Correct, that's right.
It's not going to hurt you to have a surplus of funds.
No, it's not going to at all. And as Nilma was saying, as regards to inflation, when we consider the rising prices that over time that takes place, we have to be prepared for that, because prices shoot up in the twinkling of an eye, and at the end of the day we want to be prepared in order to give our child the best opportunity to succeed.
Speaking of opportunity, how important, Nilma, is, as Simone mentioned, involving your child at the appropriate age to start teaching them also good financial habits themselves? Because if you think of especially a child preparing for SCA, then secondary school, the child starts to develop a certain level of maturity. They are working toward qualifying themselves for work themselves, and if they have the right attitude to money and to saving and to investment through their parents and involving them in this process, they will have inculcated those habits themselves in their own lives.
So Paul, I would have been here before and spoke towards investing for children, and at that point I would have spoken about the importance of involving your child in that process. When a child, though their investments in our instance has to be opened in the name of the parent for the child, if you involve the child in the process, take them in with you when you're going to make the actual deposits. You give them an allowance. Show them how it is important to put aside maybe 10% of their allowance. Even if it's $2 and you can match their $2 or their $10 and add that to their deposit. When you get your statement, you show them how the money is increasing and the value of what they are sacrificing now, and explain to them how that will benefit them in the future as they go along, because they are now sacrificing a little piece of what they are getting today to be able to benefit in the future for their very own education. My son, for example, the little one, which is Swati, I'm sure you heard the name before, he wants to be a pilot, so he's into aeronautics and he's very much into all his books, and he does his research and he will go on the computer and see this. And so when you involve them in the process from an early age, they of themselves get a greater appreciation for what you as a parent is doing for them.
They build a value system for it.
Exactly. The rule of thumb that we have is 1/3 they spend on themselves, so they go out and they enjoy. 1/3 they save, and 1/3 they put aside. And once we can start just building these little habits within them, it's automatic that they think about, okay, what are some of my goals? My education.
Tiny goals.
Exactly. So, mommy, daddy, I have something here. Please put this into my account. So it helps them along the way to build the habits that will ensure that they continue on as they go on in life.
Let's just reiterate the available instruments from primary, secondary, and tertiary that are available through the UTC once again.
We have the Children Investment Starter Plan, which
Children Investment Starter Plan.
That's the CISP or CISP. That starts
that you can start from
birth.
Yes.
Then there's the Student Investment and Protection Plan, which you start from 6 months. I would also want to add that you can also include the US dollar income fund for parents who have children studying abroad, where they can open accounts
and they can have access outside.
And they can have access utilizing the fund card. All right.
And the aspect that you spoke about, the insurance coverage, which is
the Student Investment and Protection
That's
Plan.
That's right, yes.
And then you can still utilize the TT dollar income fund for short-term contingency.
And if you get lucky in the end and it all comes back, you can reinvest it somewhere else.
Correct.
That's right. Yes. Because one of the important things for us to understand is that saving for our children's education is a long-term goal. But along the way, there will be some short-term contingencies. So we need to have a balance. We need to have some long-term instruments where we have the SIPP and the CISP, as well as our TT income fund and our US income fund accounts.
And those funds also give you options even after you've graduated, because as we all know, in this ever-changing world, you have to keep upgrading your skills.
Correct.
So education never really ends.
That's right.
And you have to prepare for that.
Exactly. It's a lifelong journey.
It's a lifelong journey if you want to be competitive. Ladies, thank you so much once again. And more information at TTUTC.
.com.
All right, and the number to call is?
624-8648.
All right, thank you very much. We're talking to Nilma Campbell, Marketing Officer with the UTC, and also Simone Lampkin, who is the Investment Center Manager, talking about the importance of planning for your child's education at the various stages and the various instruments that you have access to at the UTC that can help you with that investment, which is most important. We are going to go straight to Nairi Alfonso, who we have on the phone, the immediate past chair, Madam Chair of First Citizens. Good morning.